guys, Eddie back with Couch Talk. Welcome back to the show. If it's your first time with me, welcome to the show. Guys, please hit like, please hit subscribe, turn your notifications on. It really helps me out with the algorithm, and I need all the help I can get. Got a relatively quick one for you today. This one's going to be about finance a little bit because I haven't done one on finance in a while. Those are my roots, right? I used to be a financial consultant. I wanted to talk about the classes in American society and really in the globe at large. One of the things that you often hear about when you're discussing politics and when you're discussing economics is they'll tell you that there are, essentially three different broad classes. There's an upper class, middle class, and a lower class. And largely, some politicians on certain sides will profess to be in favor of certain classes, right? Like it's usually assumed that the left is in favor of the lower class, right? They will try to help the lower class as much as possible with safety nets, social welfare programs, things of that nature. And likewise, they'll tell you that the right is in favor of the upper class because usually the right is more in line with business freedom, which allows the upper class more mobility with their businesses because they usually make up a larger percentage of the owners group. And then, of course, the middle class is kind of that weird redheaded stepchild that just sort of gets left out in the dust because nobody really professes to help the middle class, although both of them sort of try, right? The left will tell you that they're in favor of the middle class because they try to keep the middle class a healthy, large bracket by trying to uplift people from the lower class in and put them in the middle class bracket. And likewise, the right will tell you that they're in favor of the middle class because they'll say, hey, well, you guys are paying a lot of taxes. If you didn't have to pay those taxes, you might be able to get uplifted from the middle class to the upper class bracket. Or if you're lower class and you're paying some taxes, you might find tax relief there and get lifted into the middle class. And there's a lot of different games they play, right? A lot of different things they'll tell you to try to intimate that they are for the working man, right? But the class system as we know it is kind of damaged. It's kind of off, right? It's not exactly the way we imagine. And one of the things that I've noticed most recently is that it really isn't about how much money you make. What it's about is how you manage that money. And I suggest that we actually reconstruct our notion of what it truly means to be lower, middle, and upper class. Because I think one of the troubles that America runs into at large is just a failure to have good financial sense, a failure to have just good general understanding of home finance and how to manage it. And so that's one of the reasons I was a financial consultant for so long, was to try to communicate some of these basic principles to people. And you'd just be amazed at how resistant everyone is. But let's talk about why the current class system no longer works. Here's a poser for you. Would you rather be filthy rich, like rich beyond your wildest dreams, in the year 200 AD, or would you rather be lower class, poor as hell today? Now, I don't know about you guys, but I would pick being poor today over being rich 1,000 years ago, or even 500, or even 100 years ago. Any day of the week, and twice on Sunday. Right now, I'm sitting in an air-conditioned home. It's a small home, right? It's not a large home. It's very, very small, but it's an air-conditioned home, and God, I love it. Air conditioning. I just got through with brushing my teeth. How cool is that, to have teeth after the age of 40? which, by the way, you wouldn't have in the year 200 AD, probably. How nice is it to be able to drink a bottle of water without getting E. coli? Like, you guys have no idea the palatial wealth that even a lower class person today in America has in comparison to 100 years ago, or in comparison to many other places in the world. People don't realize that America is just, our standard of living is just fabulously wealthy, right? So even the people who are really struggling are actually just very well off in the grand scheme of life. So that's one of the intricacies. Another intricacy is this. I have seen time and time again two people make exactly the same amount of money. Exactly the same amount of money. They have the exact same salary across the board. They do the exact same type of work, the exact same amount of work. They have the same family structure. They have the same number of obligations. They live in the same place. But one succeeds and one fails. Why? Again, we're talking about money management, right? And I can tell you, throughout my career, and I began, like I said, very, very poor. My family was very, very poor. And I myself was literally living on the street for about a week. And I was just lucky enough to sneak in that, thank God, I got my apartment, my new job, and everything just lined up perfectly so I didn't have to stay living in my car for the rest of my life. Thank God. Everything just kind of like synced up. All the stars aligned at that very last moment. And, since that day, I've been very, very financially conscious because I never want to be in that position. I was terrified. I was terrified of where I was. And I was afraid, man, maybe this is it, because after you hit that spiral and you're living out of your car, what do you do? Then, you don't have great clothes to go to interviews in. You're sleeping in them, It's a bad domino effect. So I was terrified. So everything just synced up perfectly to get me off the streets that 1 week. And ever since that day, I have promised myself that I will manage my money in a good fashion and be a good steward of my money. And since then, even though I have made far less than other people, far less, I have been far more successful than they are because of my desire to save money. So I propose this new class system. I propose that to be upper class, what that truly means is that you don't have to work. That's what that means. Not that you don't work, you might work anyway, but that you don't have to. If you so chose, you could either retire, or you're like an owner of a company where you don't have to do the work. You have other people do the work for you. That, to me, is what an upper class person is. A middle class person is not someone with a certain amount of money, right? Not somebody with a certain asset level or a certain income level. But rather, to me, a middle-class person is someone with an inclining financial situation, right? So let's say one thing I've always said is I'd much rather be at the bottom but moving up than to be at the top but heading toward oblivion, right? Like Trump, for example, he's got tons and tons of money, but it looks like he's, cascading down, with the exception, of course, of his most recent campaign. Who knows what that's going to do? And he does a good job of leveraging political capital to turn it into finance. But, he looks like he's... So, and Trump may be upper class because he may still not have to work. But that's kind of a complex situation. But there are many people in life who make more money than I do right now. They make more money than I do, and yet they are failing. They're failing because they're not managing their money well. They're failing because they're making tons and tons of luxury purchases that they don't need. They're failing because they don't know how to save or invest. They're failing because they are constantly adding financial obligations to their life, getting a car payment, getting, this, that, and the other thing. And then they get themselves in a situation where they're in over their head. And they may make $150,000 a year, but they're in over their head because they've just put too much financial burden on their shoulders. So that, to me, a middle class person is someone within a static or inclining financial position. And a lower class person is someone with a declining financial position. So in other words, even if they're making good money, they're creating a situation where they're losing money month over month over month over month over month. And eventually they'll run out. That's just how that works. Now, there are some exceptions to these rules, but to me, that is what a true class system is essentially is. You're either making it, you don't have to make it, like you're upper class, you don't have to make it, or you're making it, or you're not making it, right? Those are the three options, right? And really, one of the weird things about politics I see online all the time is they'll try to make it like the middle class and the lower class are two different classes based on income level, and they try to kind of pit each other, pit you against each other. So like they always want the middle class to be thinking that the lower class is taking all of their money with welfare or gunning for their jobs, and likewise they want the lower class people to think that the middle class are just a bunch of greedy punks that don't want to give them the welfare, right? But it's always like this battle between those two classes. And then, meanwhile, the upper class is like, they're fighting each other. It's funny, because they know that battle just extends the status quo. And they're rich, so the status quo is good for them, right? But we've got, as a working class, as a class that has to work, because there's really only two classes from that angle, right? There's either the class that works or the class that doesn't have to, right? But as a class that has to work, and I'm definitely among that class, right? Why are we fighting? We all want the same thing. We all want to achieve that American dream and get to the point where we don't have to work. Right? We all want to get to that retirement. We all want to get to be independently wealthy or have those residual income streams where we just don't have to worry about everything because it's just coming. The money's just coming, right? And that would be great. Now, there's something to be said about what that does to making the economic world spin. Like let's say everybody was rich tomorrow. I doubt very seriously that the world would continue to propagate like it normally does, right? We basically would have a bunch of rich people who would no longer be rich because their companies would no longer sell products because nobody would need them anymore because, there's a lot of stuff that goes behind that, right? There's a lot of people who wouldn't go to work and do their job. Who would be a garbage collector if everybody was a millionaire? Who would do that, right? Who would clean bathroom floors for a living, right? Nobody's really going to do the janitorial services. Nobody's going to do... There's a lot of that work that just never gets done unless we have a class-based system in some fashion, or unless we mandate that it gets done, which is another tricky concept, right? That's like you could take everybody's freedom away and force them to do certain things. But either way, basically, the class system has a lot of valuable impact in our society, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I just wanted to kind of discuss these classes in my mind, how I see them, because the upper class is those who don't have to work, middle class is those with a steady or an inclining financial position. They eventually will make upper class if unprovoked, if unmodified, right? And the lower class is those who are beneath that static condition. They're losing money slowly. And or are like, I guess I would also consider lower class those who just barely make, like who are literally making it on the wire every single month. And then if what they're not prepped for, what they're not setting aside any money for is any kind of emergency situation. And there's a huge number of people by that definition that are lower class. So if you're in that position, you've got to start saving now. And don't give me this, I can't. I guarantee you have a luxury purchase in your life that you can do without. I guarantee you can go to work next morning without stopping at McDonald's by bringing food into work with you. I guarantee you can skip that Red Bull. I guarantee you can quit smoking. I guarantee. See, there's a million different things that I guarantee you those luxury purchases could go, right? Now, if you don't want to let them go, that's fine. But don't whine to anybody that you're not making it if your choices are what's putting you there. Just gotta say it. And let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear some comments to respond to this. But what do you guys think about my class system? Because I really feel like that's a more accurate way of looking at things than just income. Because I've seen people that are making 150 grand and they're about to lose all three of their houses. And I've seen people that make 40 grand a year and they're doing great. They're saving money and they're eventually going to retire. So, what do you guys think? Catch you next time on Couch Talk.